Well, rail passengers are being warned to only travel if absolutely necessary today as workers begin a 48-hour walkout.
Well, yesterday, RMT members voted to reject the latest offer by Network Rail. That's a 9% pay rise over 2 years, which they claim was substandard. And joining us now from the picket line at Euston Station is the RMT General Secretary, Mick Lynch. Good morning, Mr Lynch. Just before we get started, we'd like to show you something that you said on this programme to myself and Susanna Reid about 3 weeks ago about not taking strike action over Christmas. Let's have a quick look.
How are you not the Grinch?
Every day is sensitive. There's no good time to have a strike. We have deliberately left the Christmas period.
Oh, come on, you've done it deliberately in the run-up to Christmas and afterwards.
You asked me a question about Christmas. We have left the Christmas period strike-free deliberately.
We have left the Christmas period strike-free deliberately. So either something's changed or you were being disingenuous with us. Which is it?
It's that something's changed. So Network Rail have decided from Wednesday to start, start imposing their unacceptable changes that our members have just voted against. So they have told us that no matter what happens, they will impose work-life balance changes and changes to the working practices and the cuts to the safety inspection regime on the railway by 50%. So we had to respond to that. So the additional strike action that we're putting on is during the Christmas shutdown, as from Christmas Eve the railway shuts down for engineering works, and during that period our members will take additional strike action, which is frankly targeted at Network Rail's engineering works rather than the passenger service.
What are those changes they're imposing? Just to be very clear so that people understand, we always hear about pay. Is it only pay? Or is it other things? Just be as brief and as clear as you can about what they're opposing as of Wednesday.
Well, Network Rail are bringing a series of changes on what they call a modernising maintenance programme. That involves cutting 50% of maintenance scheduled tasks. They will cut the safety regime and the inspection regime by 50%. They want to move our members to a far greater level of unsocial hours, so Saturday nights, weekend work, midweek nights. They're seeking to change their competency levels. They want them to work outside their current skills levels, and we'll keep talking to the company on that, but at the moment their proposals are not acceptable. But that doesn't mean that we can't reach a compromise. So for many of our members in Network Rail, pay is secondary to the changes to their working lives and the fact that they probably won't see their families at the levels that they're used to, and the unsocial hours element is very important to them. On the train operating companies, they want to shut every booking office in Britain. They want to bring in driver-only operation, and many other changes to our people's terms and conditions that are not acceptable at this stage, all at a cut price, way below inflation pay increase on both of those companies.
Well, these are all the bones of the heart of the dispute. Can we just focus on Christmas now? And I'm not being sentimental about this. You will know, because you keep an eye on the opinion polls, that many people who support your right to strike and who support your basic thrust and your cause are appalled that you're striking over Christmas, over this Christmas week. They feel that it's an act of almost sadism and unkindness. Whatever happened to Christmas kindness? Why couldn't you put all of these strikes, every single one of them, into January? Why do you have to target people at Christmas? Because you're going to be putting people out of business who run hotels, who run restaurants, who run bars and retailers. This is the time of year where they make their money, and you are robbing them of their income for the coming year. Many of them are saying they're going to go bust.
Well, we're not targeting Christmas. It isn't Christmas yet, Richard. I don't know when your Christmas starts, but mine starts on Christmas Eve. So we are striking at this time because we've not got a settlement.
Commercial Christmas starts in December. You know that perfectly well. You're being disingenuous.
It's not disingenuous, is it?
It is disingenuous. Of course it is.
Well, if you let me finish
commercial Christmas does not start on Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve is when people shut early. Don't be ridiculous.
Richard, you're just talking to yourself.
Commercial Christmas starts at the end of November and early December, and that's when people make their money, and you are depriving them of their income. That's the point.
Right. Have you finished then?
Well, will you answer the question, Mr Lynch? And then I'll shut up.
Well, I have answered the question. So, well, OK, if you give me a minute, I will.
No, you said that Christmas started on Christmas Eve, and that's nonsense. I won't let you get away with nonsense. Well, Christmas does not start on Christmas Eve. Richard. So let's just be clear. It starts in early December, and that's what we're talking about.
Do you want to
Richard, why don't you just interview yourself if you want to
Cheap
talk
point,
to me like
Mr Lynch. I'm holding you to account on behalf of the viewers, not on behalf of myself. I'm not interested in the sound of my own voice. I'd like to hear yours
You're just talking to yourself at the moment.
I'd like to hear yours answering the question.
Well, if you'd like to hear mine, why don't you stop talking for a second?
Because you won't answer the question, and until you do, I'll keep interrupting. It's my job. On you go. Job on.
Well, you can't interrupt me if you don't let me talk.
You just said...
Okay.
No,
please
sorry, you just said that Christmas begins on Christmas Eve, and that has to be challenged. So, would you come back and answer the point about why you're taking the action over the weeks leading up to Christmas, destroying many people's Christmases?
Are you going to let me speak now?
Yes, please do.
Are you going to let me speak?
Yes, please do.
I've told you that Network Rail will start imposing these changes from tomorrow, from December the 15th. They told us that 3 weeks ago. They told us that the consultation process had finished and they will move towards implementation. So our strike action is in response to that. The strike action we're taking at Christmas is during the Christmas close down, where there will be no passenger services running after the evening of December the 24th. So that does not impact on Christmas because the railway is closed down from the 25th to the 26th into the 27th. And that's when we're taking the action that you're referring to. This week's action was given with 3 weeks' notice, well in advance, so that we could get negotiations going, and we haven't actually had strike action for 8 weeks. So there's been plenty of time for the companies to put proposals that may be acceptable, and our members have rejected those proposals on Network Rail on a turnout of 83%. Two-thirds of them voted against the proposals, so we have to move this dispute forward. I have no intention of spoiling people's Christmas. The government is contributing to that spoiling of people's Christmas because they've brought these strikes on by stopping the companies from making suitable proposals. That's the position that we're in, and we'll have to keep this dispute going until we get a reasonable settlement and a reasonable set of proposals that our members want to accept.
Look, commercial Christmas, Richard was making the point, starts earlier and that's already been impacted. For many people, December the 24th, Christmas Eve, is a big day for travel and it will impact on them getting home, having a strike on that day. You're saying that actually this is in the hands of management, of the government, of people that could step in and help you save Christmas, if you like. My concern is that you do need public support. And for those businesses that may well go bust, who say they've already lost money, will do with today's strike, will do with tomorrow's strike, will do with the ones that may or may not come, they have no influence on changing working conditions for you. You are losing their support, particularly at something as emotive as Christmas, when we've all been separated for so many years.
Didn't you run a poll on your show last week where two-thirds of the respondents said that they supported the strikes? That's after we announced them. I saw a poll on YouGov last week that said the public was still supporting our railway strikes.
Not this morning, now, I'm afraid. It might be that Christmas is the tipping point.
Well,
we've had a lot of views in, and only one is saying good for you. The rest are all saying, I can't believe they're doing this to the ordinary person.
What did the poll that your programme ran online last week say?
I actually don't know, I'm afraid. I don't know what that poll says.
Well, I know. It was your programme ran a poll last week and we got two-thirds of the support
But the difference is now that they know it's going to affect their Christmas, which is why my question was, my concern is that Christmas is the tipping point.
We've still got plenty of time before the Christmas Eve strikes. If Andrew Haines and the train operating companies, Hugh Merriman, the rail minister, and Mark Harper, the Secretary of State, want to come to me with a set of serious proposals to improve their offer so that we can get a settlement to the dispute, we'll come over and see them as soon as possible. They've already invited me to a set of talks and we'll attend those to try and get a settlement to this dispute. And when our members decide that they want to accept it, that's when the dispute will be finished.
Well, it's a fair point, and we can now speak to the Chief Executive of Network Rail, Andrew Haines. Mr Haines, I'm sure you're aware, excuse me, with Mr Lynch's points that he's been making there. He says they are concerned about safety, they're concerned about their members' working lives already stretched to the limit, being asked to do more for less money, and actually at the point where they're concerned about passenger safety. They've tried and tried and tried and tried to negotiate. In November, it looked like progress was going to be made. Now they've been told, as of tomorrow, no, it's all being imposed upon you. You can see why they would argue that it's unfair that they're being blamed for this disruption, can't you?
If it was true, then it would. But look, it's really helpful for once to be able to respond directly to some of those myths. Look, we only said we were going to proceed with local consultation on implementing these reforms once the strikes had been called. It's simply not correct to say the strikes were called in response to our action. The exact opposite is true. We've been suspending the local consultation all the time we've been in conversations with the RMT, and we only confirmed those dates once the RMT called the strike dates. That's a very factual position that can be, that's on the record, and we can absolutely confirm that to be true. Right. Secondly, Mick said that we were reducing safety tasks. We're not. We're reducing unnecessary activity that modern safety methods means are not necessary. We have an independent safety regulator in UK railways, and they will absolutely ensure that we don't harm safety. And thirdly, we're not changing one single word of any employee's terms and conditions. All we're asking people to do is work within their existing terms and conditions. And I think that's reasonable. And that's why we've been able to come up with a good pay offer. That's not what everybody would want, but over 2 years, it's worth more than 9% to everybody. And it's worth rather more than that for the very lowest paid.
You're absolutely entitled and right to make detailed points in rebuttal to what Mr Lynch has told us. But can we just step back from this a little now and just look at this over the period of 6 months? This is a complete industrial relations failure, isn't it? This reminds me of the 1970s. It is quite extraordinary that this dispute has been dragging on for half a year and looks like going into the new year. It seems to me to be a failure of imagination on both sides, actually, but we're talking to you now, a failure of imagination to find a way around a dispute which, in the end, we all know is going to be settled. There is a solution out there waiting to be enacted. Why can't you use your imagination and your intelligence to think maybe laterally and find a way to stop this dispute after nearly half a year?
Well, let me observe that we've already reached a settlement with 2 of the trade unions. And we're hoping to reach a settlement with another group of staff later this week. And let me also observe that the RMT have had industrial action Scotland, and they've still got an outstanding issue with Transport for London. I would suggest that the failure of imagination is with the RMT. They're the ones who are not able to agree either in London or with Network Rail or with 14 different train operators. They are the common theme. We've been able to reach agreement. We've been able to use that imagination and reach settlement with 2 of their partner trade unions.
But it does seem to those looking at it, as I say, with a degree of perspective, that what we're looking at here, and this interview and the one that preceded it, is a case in point. It's kind of a he said, she said. It's descended into whataboutery. That's, it seems to me, what this item is turning into on both sides. It's all about whataboutery. There doesn't seem to be a language that anyone is able to talk and speak that can find a way through this.
No, like, I think with respect, that's a mischaracterization. We've spent many months talking, and we continue to talk, and we have constructive conversations. But if you set up an interview like this, you can't expect me to not respond.
Of course,
to
and you're absolutely right to. OK, well, let me just ask one point, which I think people at home will connect with. This idea of people being asked to work outside their competency and experience, and the idea of closing booking offices across the country and having driver-only trains, so there isn't somebody with the same training experience on that train. Why do you think that's safe when those that do those jobs and work on it don't? People need to understand that.
So unfortunately, Kate, only the first of your 3 observations relates to Network Rail, and I can absolutely categorically rebuff that. We do not ask anybody to work beyond their competency.
Okay.
We would
what
not.
About the other points then? I realise you're not in charge of it, it's the individual companies, but you must have a view on it because it's in your interest to resolve it. Why does a group of people who it's their trade think it's unsafe and those that run the companies think it's fine?
Well, look, as you've said, it's a dispute, isn't it? And people hold positions in that context. What I would say is, I've had about 37 years of work in Britain's railways, and driver-only operated trains were running before I even started.
And was that driver-only operators without anybody else on the train?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, from the early 1980s, they've been running in Britain and in large parts of the rest of the world.
Okay.
So you can argue it's not a good idea, but it's very hard to argue that from the evidence that it's unsafe, because we've got 40 years of experience.
All right, just to finish with, you must be concerned that the longer this goes on, the more and more people are going to turn away from the railways. They're going to find alternative ways to travel, to lead their lives, and they won't come back when this dispute is over. And that's been a prediction that's been growing over the last 3 or 4 months. So you must be concerned about that.
You're bang on the money. That is the big issue here. About 96% of people using the railway pre-COVID are now back using it, but people's travel patterns are different. So if we want to grow in strong railway as part of Britain's economy, we've got to welcome new people. That means a reliable, safe, value for money service. 10 days of strike action, 4 weeks of disruption is absolutely devastating to that campaign. We should be together actually selling Britain's railway as part of a green economy. And this is a massive disruption to all those people. I hugely apologise to people affected by this. Let's get this sorted once and for all. But we've got to do that with the truth, and we've got to do that realistic about the need for a modern railway to serve a modern Britain.
All right, Mr Haynes, thank you very much indeed. Apologies if you felt that was an exercise in banging heads together, but to some extent it was. But thank you for your time. We appreciate it. Thank you.